We'll go ahead and get started in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, because there's nothing like the last minute to get more people in here. So you guys have everything you need?
I think so.
Yes, exactly.
Give me some food and then you'll have real explosion.
Yeah. Okay.
I know. I feel like it's too quiet. It's
Too big for seniors.
That would be comfortably so.
That'd be great, yeah. It's like, had you sent me that, we're gonna do our monthly update that day, so maybe I'll do it.
Okay.
Okay, no, that's good, that's
You're
good.
welcome to it. I was just going to try and keep it short.
Just really go to Germany next week.
And they bring in somebody. They categorize them as startup or selling.
No,
They pair
We have receivables plentiful, so we keep moving and out.
Yeah, so Greg So
And so we're like scrapping everything together now. Like,
sold it.
so it's like, and then we'll be able to go. So we're kind of parlaying that. Yeah, trying to get time.
Which is a group of companies. They select a group of stage companies. So all the board members submit companies they feel would be qualified, and they have requirements, you know, number of employees, number of years experience, revenue, and those sort of things. And then they down select from there like 100 different every year. So every year there's a group of 50 members. And it's again, it's a network of it's alumni support and sponsorship. So, like one of the big sponsors this year is so, and then it's confederated with Ben.
Good boss.
So it's sort of a triumvirate network for startups.
Art's here, we can start now.
Hey!
Man, the myth, the legend.
NASA arrived.
Yeah.
That's the Colorado Center.
Yes.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started since we have a good number of people already. Thank you everyone for coming and to the 7th annual Denver Startup Week. Welcome, this is your first session. And if not, I hope it's been a productive time for you. In case you don't know, Denver Startup Week is the largest entrepreneurial event anywhere. It's almost entirely, well, I think it's entirely volunteer run, and it supports nearly 400 sessions this year throughout this whole week. And on top of that, in true startup fashion, it's free for everyone. This would not be possible without some incredible work from sponsors, support from sponsors. So could we have the sponsor slide up? But I do want to thank our title sponsors, which are Aging 2.0, Colorado State University, Chase for Business, the Downtown Denver Partnership, and Slack. And in addition, this session is part of the Maker Track, and the the different tracks. There's 6 different tracks as part of Denver Startup Week, and they're all aimed at supporting different aspects of the entire entrepreneurial team. The Maker Track this year is generously sponsored by Colorado Lending Source, and we have a representative from Colorado Lending Source here today, the great Carol Jones, who's the CFO of Colorado Lending Source, and I'd like her to say a few introductory words.
Great.
Would you like a mic, or would you like to?
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good morning. Like Tanya said, my name is Carol Jones. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Colorado Lending Source. We have been the title sponsor for the Maker Track for the past 3 years, and it's been really exciting to see the track grow and to include different industries over that time, including aerospace. The track really aligns with our mission of fostering the economic development of diverse small businesses within our communities. And so we're just very excited to be a part of this. So as your sponsor, thank you for spending your time participating and contributing this week in Denver Startup Week. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tanya.
Thank you, Carol. I also want to say we're very fortunate and want to thank Metro State University and this amazing Caveat Center. I want to introduce the CEO of York Space Systems, Dirk Longer, to say a few words about the university and the aerospace presence here.
So I'll try and be loud as well so you can hear me. But yeah, they wanted to. York Space Systems is actually located right here on campus. This is where our engineering division is. As I think most of you know, it's a phenomenal place to be. Metro State is right in the center of it all. Downtown Denver absolutely has its pulse on innovation. In this very room, we've actually done a PDR review and a successful CDR review with Air Force, Army, all present, all getting to see Metro State, Denver, and the aerospace community. We do a lot of work with Metro State. The Aerospace and Aviation Sciences Department is actually just across the street. We work heavily with the dean of that college. Our engineering works to develop curriculum so that students that graduate from Metro State hit the ground running. They have the skill sets, they have the capabilities that companies like York are looking for. Also over there, we have a flight software lab and the ability for students to develop entire satellites and not just develop them on computers. They can actually build them and test them. And we're also working with the university to develop a mission operations center, which the students will have access to and can even operate the satellites that they build. So innovation is absolutely happening in Denver in aerospace. It's happening right here in this community, in this university. And I think that we can all work together and we'll see a lot more innovation so that we can really make this industry all that it should be. So that's a little bit on York and MSU, and happy to talk to anyone after.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Tanya mentioned as well, the Advanced Manufacturing Institute is over there in the building right next door. And it'd be great for folks to kind of see a lot of the work that they're doing and training kind of the next generation of workers on the latest and greatest tools.
And Lockheed Martin as well has a presence, a big presence over in that building. So that's a brand new building, a year old maybe?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
ribbon cutting was in March.
Pretty impressive.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. And then one more announcement about an event coming up next month, Startup Space through CU Boulder.
Yeah, so we are putting together Startup Week in Boulder Space. It's a sister program to Startup Week. It's during a weekend. It's October 12th to the 14th at CU Boulder. Right now, we are looking for participants to participate through the entire weekend, but we are also looking for mentors and for people in the industry that could serve for the customer validation, so that can talk to the teams from the customer perspective. So if you want to know more, you can talk to me or you can talk to Leo. We are representing the organizing team here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, great. So let's get started. I think we're probably good with slides at this point. We can go to the last slide. Yep, perfect, thank you. So as you know, the session is called The Role of Aerospace Startups in the Innovation Ecosystem. My name is Tanya Ramond. I'm the Director of Product Management at BridgeSat, and BridgeSat is an aerospace startup company located here in Denver. We relocated here last year from California, actually. BridgeSat is focused on revolutionizing satellite communications to eliminate the bandwidth scarcity issue. And as some of us know, I know not everyone in the room is necessarily from an aerospace background, but many of us know that Colorado is home to a thriving aerospace industry. Depending on what statistics you cite, we have the biggest or the second biggest aerospace economy in the country. So we have almost household names have their presence here. Titans like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Ball, Sierra Nevada, Raytheon. But we also have a startup sector that's growing in the state. Sometimes people refer to the aerospace startup sector as new space. So what we want to explore today with this panel is what is the role for that aerospace, new space sector in this big aerospace economy that we have. And so today we're going to hear from 4 excellent panelists, and I'd like to do a short introduction for each of them. So first, I won't go in order of the way you're sitting, but we have Bradley Cheatham, or do you go by Brad or Bradley?
Brad's fine.
Brad, great. He's the CEO of Advanced Space. Brad is an engineer, a 3 times over entrepreneur, and lifelong commercial space advocate. As CEO of Advanced Space, he leads company operations and strategy to deliver flight dynamics and operations software and services to clients across the space industry. As an advocate for the space industry, he serves on the board of directors for the Future Space Leaders Foundation, is a member of the Entrepreneurship and Investment Committee of the International Astronautical Federation, and serves on the board of advisors and the board of trustees of students for the exploration and development of space. Earlier this year, Advanced Space was awarded a $250,000 early stage capital grant from the state of Colorado as part of its Advanced Industries program. So welcome, Brad.
Thank you.
And then we have Maureen Bryan to his right. Maureen has over 20 years of aerospace experience in the aerospace field, and in her role as CEO, she works to guide the strategic direction of Oakman Aerospace. I'm sorry, I should have said you're from Oakman Aerospace. To guide the strategic direction of Oakman Aerospace, both domestically and internationally. She and her co-founder, Stan Kennedy, grew the business around a unique offering of modular open system architectures and rapid and responsive space system designs to make space for everyone, literally. Maureen's leadership includes international teaming and marketing, multi-company teaming, program management and corporate security, as well as mission analysis and simulation, utilizing various analysis and management tools. Oakman Aerospace was stated to be one of the 2015 Colorado companies to watch, is part of the Colorado Thought Leaders Forum, and Oakman is also one of the network companies within the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network of Colorado. Welcome, Maureen. And that's a good segue to Greg Greenwood, who is the CEO and Executive Director of Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network, or BEN, of Colorado. Greg is a veteran Coloradan entrepreneur and has founded several companies, including those in technology, manufacturing, distribution, motorsports, retail, services, and nonprofit. And like all entrepreneurs, has experienced the ups and downs, a variety of successes and failures to keep him humble. Greg most recently sold Com Cables, a network infrastructure manufacturer and low voltage distributor he founded in 1999, to the Audax Group, a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm based in Boston. Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network, or BEN, serves to strengthen Colorado's expanding scale-up ecosystem by connecting high-growth companies with successful entrepreneurs and community members. And aerospace is one of the BEN target industries. So, welcome.
And no aerospace experience for me.
No aerospace experience. Well,
I love serving this group.
yeah, so we want space to be for everyone, so that's not needed, right? Okay, awesome. Okay, and finally we have Kay Sears, who's Vice President and General Manager of Military Space of Lockheed Martin. And there she has general management responsibility for critical national security space programs, including Global Positioning System, or GPS, space protection, and other Department of Defense space programs. With nearly 3 decades of experience, Kay is a respected leader in the space and satellite communications industry and has extensive experience in rapid response solutions for both military and civil agencies of the U.S. government. In 2009, Kay was appointed to the President's National Security Telecommunications Advisory Committee, to provide information, technical expertise, advice, and guidance regarding issues that may affect national security telecommunications capabilities. Lockheed Martin has a major facility in Littleton and at its Waterton campus, and has started work on a $350 million satellite production facility there, which is scheduled to open in 2020. So thank you for joining us, Kate. Okay, so we'll do about 40 minutes of Q&A with the panel, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. Okay, so let's get started, and first I'll ask, as we said, Colorado has the second largest aerospace economy in the country. It's first, second. I think I heard the governor said it was first, so it's first.
Per capita.
Per capita, yes, so if you talk about per capita or per pupil, depends on the statistics. But anyway, it's extremely prominent. And again, the economy is fueled by titans like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Sierra Nevada, Ball, et cetera. So where are the areas where a new space startup company can compete in this economy? And feel free to use the mic or yell if everyone can hear in the back.
All right, is this on? We got? All right, good. I think we're recording, right? So maybe we should probably use the mic to make sure we capture it.
I think so, although I
only
think
hear you.
they're drop down mics as well. But
So I'll jump in on this one. I think I'll take the entrepreneur answer, which is everywhere. I think that there is room for innovation and for small businesses to play a role throughout the whole value chain of space. We hear a lot talking about the big opportunities of collecting data and the big opportunities of CubeSats and small satellites and what they can do to drive commercial services and commercial value. But from where I'm sitting, I think there's very few places in the space industry that I can think of that entrepreneurial space or small space companies can't play a role, whether that's driving innovation or new ways of doing things. And I think there is a sort of a false dichotomy that gets set up between new space and what would have to contrarily or necessarily be old space, which I don't really think makes a lot of sense. To me, we're one space industry, and it's a matter of who your customers are and how you deliver value to them. And I think for advanced space, we work just as closely with Lockheed Martin on projects supporting government customers as we do with startup companies that have raised billions of dollars. I think that there's a role for startup space or small commercial space companies throughout that whole value chain.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. I'll give the Titan answer, which is also everywhere. If you look at the space enterprise, if you look at the entire value chain, I believe there are opportunities for startup space companies to participate in all aspects of that. I think when you apply the US government piece of that, so for the US government, there become places along that value chain where it's maybe a little easier for startup companies to play than to jump in the middle of a major program. But Lockheed Martin's perspective is that this old space, new space debate isn't really the issue because it's not, companies don't innovate, people innovate, and so we're looking for good people who innovate, and we're looking for companies that have employed those people. I would also say that Lockheed Space is not looking to do everything in the value chain. We are looking for places where we can outsource. We do a ton of outsourcing and subcontracting and leveraging small space startups. I think it's more an understanding of trying to find out where you guys are, what you're doing, and then being able to create a bridge into some of the program efforts that we have ongoing to get you into that and to really build that bridge. So the answer is everywhere, and then I would just caveat that with the lens on the government side of maybe there's some easier places to start than others.
So I'll jump on then too. And I saw Vicki Lee come in, so I'll give her a shout out because I'm going to use her statistic. There are 160 directly aerospace related companies in the state of Colorado. Over 56% of those are small business. As Oakman Aerospace, we look at how we can team with other small, medium enterprises. We don't claim to do everything. We're a 20+ person company. We do some things very, very well, and we look to team with other companies that do things very well. If you expand that statistic, there's over 600 adjacent companies that do aerospace related items, anywhere from data processing, data distribution, machine learning, AI, and so forth. And so it's really important that everyone understand that you don't necessarily, even the large companies don't do things all by themselves. Teaming is essential, partnerships are essential, and the standard term, high tide raises all boats. So that's where we like to play in that area.
I sit in a different seat than you guys running aerospace businesses or being part of them. And Ben exists as a 501c right inside CU, funded by a global private equity group out of New York. And we're here simply to support, startup, and scale up aerospace companies in a couple of other industries. And so I love what you talked about, Kay, and how you support these earlier stage aerospace companies. We want to do the same thing. We do it from a different perspective. We can't bring revenue to the table, but we bring resource, experience, and what we're really trying to do as an organization is grow the CEOs, grow the leadership of these organizations so they do have ongoing long-term success. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that throughout. That's where we play. And I love the stats you shared, Maureen, about how many aerospace companies are there?
Directly related, 160.
160, and how many are small business?
56%.
56%. So that's 80 plus companies, and upwards of 90 companies that we can support in their growth. And that's a big driver for the economy. We exist to really fuel and rocket that economy, pun intended.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so to kind of play off of that, it sounds like there's, from the Lockheed Martin perspective perhaps, aerospace companies don't necessarily have a monopoly, or small aerospace startup companies don't necessarily have a monopoly on innovation. Would you agree or disagree?
I definitely would agree. If we hosted all of you at the Lockheed Martin site in Waterton or our site in Sunnyvale, you would see a tremendous amount of innovation going on. Again, because people innovate, companies, provide the support and the resources, but it's really people that innovate. And so, and I think there is room in today's space economy for a lot of innovation. Again, I wear a national security perspective here, but we are being challenged in space. There are space threats that have emerged rapidly for our country, and there is innovation that needs to happen in the space area and in the space technologies. And I think the startup community provides a lot of great opportunities to tackle some of that. I'll give you an example. We recently announced an award for our next generation OPIR system, overhead persistent infrared system for missile warning. We're going to carry standard interfaces on that platform that are going to be plug and play. And we are going to invite all companies to try to come up with creative ideas and creative payloads and sensors that can plug and play into that platform. There is no corner on the market by any of our of the other large titans on that. It's going to be a very open and inviting environment for companies and startups to come in with their technology and their ideas. Some of the things we're trying to tackle in that environment will be resiliency. It will be, other kinds of rapid processing of data, things that are in the commercial world as well, and technologies that we know are advancing in the commercial world. So we're going to create these common interfaces, which I really believe opens up an opportunity for startup companies to jump on and start to create plug and play elements of that.
So from our perspective, our tool is the innovation platform. We have a modular open system architecture modeling and sim environment that is based on early advanced plug and play technologies that we have worked very hard over the past 6 years to take commercial. And we are very much along the lines of, I hope I don't get in trouble for trademark, we're very much along the lines of the Apple cell phone model. We create the framework, we create the OS for people to come along, and we create the APIs to allow the innovation. So the bus and the hardware become commoditized and it becomes about the mission, the payload, and really what you want to do with that. You don't necessarily even have to be a space person to know that you're going to need space to deliver your product. And so that's where you need to rely on folks to help you optimize that situation and make that a cost-effective solution so that your product comes to market in a very efficient and cost-effective manner. It really makes you ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I was just gonna sort of take a little different angle on this. I think one of the key things that we're getting at is that there's a lot of value from the whole industry ecosystem here in Colorado, which is unique, but also around the country, to benefit some of these big missions as well as small missions and whatnot. But I think one of the key things that we have to keep in mind is that it's not always so straightforward, right? So one of the big challenges for small companies working with big companies are sort of how that relationship evolves, whether that's contracting terms and conditions, payment ways, whether it's fixed price or does it have to fall under government auditing requirements. There's a lot of potential interface friction between how small entrepreneurial minded companies work with big companies or even big government agencies. And I think that's something that if done well, and if the larger companies and smaller companies are able to come to these sort of agreements that are beneficial for both, and those are going to make probably both sides a little bit uncomfortable because it's not going to be your normal operating procedure. That's what is required to get these exciting benefits of partnerships. And I think I'll just add, because you mentioned Apple, and I'm sure your model doesn't extend to making all your money on dongles either. But I did want to just sort of point out and think about big tech, and a lot of times in entrepreneurial and startup communities, we like to think of Silicon Valley as sort of the example that we reference. And so to play that card here, we have to remember Google, obviously a great, innovative, huge company. Two of their biggest product areas in Android and YouTube were acquisitions of small companies that were innovating that Google identified as things that would fit into their platform and acquired. And I think as we see, and we're seeing this right now, we were talking about before the panel, Boeing buying Millennium Space Systems, which is a small satellite company based in, I think, primarily LA. But that is some of the, I think, the juice into this innovation ecosystem is when we start having big companies buying smaller companies for some of that innovation and seeding, returning investment to investors or to founders to then go out and start the next great thing. I think that's something in tech we've seen for decades in Silicon Valley. I think it's very exciting that we're starting to see the beginnings of some of that in space, and I think that's an area where Colorado, with its breadth and depth of technology companies in the space sector, could really see a lot of exciting opportunity.
Yeah, go ahead, Kay.
No, you go.
Just to add on to that, I love the excitement around commercial and aerospace connecting around innovation, because there is incredible technology coming out of Colorado, and there's no reason not to lever it into a space that is a little magical for the commercial market. If we can bridge that ecosystem, which is what the Ben Network's all about, we can really lever that for Colorado's sake and for the aerospace industry's sake. I think to demystify it for entrepreneurs and innovators to not look at space and go, I don't know about that, I don't want to really look in that direction, I want to look at the commercial market. And I know what you and Maureen are up to, Stan. I love that approach, is take what you have, take what we have, let's see where it works together and lever it for the Titans and for the country.
If I could build on that, because I think Brad brought up some really good nuggets there that we should kind of unpack a little bit. One is the business model that we might have towards a startup company. You mentioned the Boeing Millennium acquisition. Sometimes acquisition is maybe the right model. I wouldn't necessarily say that's our preferred model at Lockheed Space. We're looking to capture not just innovation, but in a lot of cases, the culture of a startup company. And if we acquire and ingest that, in a lot of cases, you can lose that culture. And so if you look at our acquisition of, our partnership of Terrain Orbital, we purposely were not looking to acquire, we were actually looking to partner. And in that business model, we are leveraging their nanosat production line and really the commercial environment that they have set up that, quite frankly, we cannot recreate in Lockheed Martin Space, and nor do we want to. What we can do though is we can use that production line and that culture of nanosats, take those products, bring them back into Waterton or one of our manufacturing facilities, and put the things on them that then go meet some of the mission needs for the contracts that we have. So we are not trying to change that company in any way. And along those lines, for the startups out there, I think it's really important to think about what kind of company you want to be in the space business, because the government is reaching out to you, which is great, and they are excited about leveraging your innovation. They're excited about leveraging the investor community. But when you accept a government contract, you go down a particular road. And at the same time, the government is saying we want to buy commercial products. We want to buy them off the shelf, back to the Apple and the app type of application. Well, if you're going down that government road, then you're off the commercial road. And I will tell you, it's very hard to be on both roads. So one of the ways that Lockheed Martin is thinking about this is stay on the commercial road, let a company like Lockheed come to you, leverage your technology back into the government so that you don't have to have the CAS accounting and you don't have to go down the terms and conditions road and what I would call, a lot of the bureaucracy that's created when you start to go down that government path. So that is a really important decision to think about as the government reaches out directly to a lot of companies. And in some cases, that could absolutely be the right road to take. In other cases, you might want to stay on the commercial road and then work with other companies that are set up to do, quote unquote, the government business. So I just offer that out as, we can probably get into that a lot, but I think that's an important thing to consider.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here. I thought it was interesting for Oakland, you made a comment that you're about 70, 30, 60, 40 commercial versus government work. And I know in aerospace, that's a big question about, do you go down the government path, you go down the commercial path, and like you say, they're very different paths, and it's very hard to do, especially when you're a small startup, it's very hard to do both at the same time. So it's kind of an existential battle a little bit, but can you talk about at Oakland how you balance that?
So sort of, kind of, not really. No, it all comes down to who pays for it. If the government pays for it, unless you're in a SBIR situation, Small Business Innovative Research Fund, there are contracting vehicles that are specifically designed for you as an entrepreneur, small business, whatever, to develop your product. They'll help you pay for it, and then they'll let you commercialize it. It is not easy. There is also instances where, as we have found that the government starts down a path with a certain technology and they're willing to let that go because it's not something they're interested in or they don't wish to pursue. And then you obviously work terms and conditions with them that allow you to take that IP and you continue with it commercially. So there are ways to do it. It does not hurt when you have come from the larger companies that have done commercial government contracting. You will drown under volumes and reams of regulations and terms and conditions and that sort of thing. But they also are working very hard to make it easier for small businesses to play. They need small businesses. They need that supplier base, as does all the prime contractors. They need the supplier base because, again, no one company can do it themselves anymore. So it's difficult, but if you pay attention, you read your contracts, you read your terms and conditions, and you understand what you're getting into, sometimes the government can be one of your best partners. They certainly pay on time, I'll tell you that much.
As long as they're open.
Yeah.
I'll just jump on it. I think one of the ways to think about it to kind of converge some of this dialogue is, when you're a small company in any business, working with big customers is going to always be a challenge, whether that's space or anything. And I think in some ways you can think of big, we call them titans today, like that. The titans, the big prime contractors, and the government though they can present very similar challenges. And what I mean by that, what are the challenges, right? It could take 12 months to put a contract in place after you've been awarded it, right? Which you're like, yay, we want it, and then you wait a year to start it. It's not necessarily what most startups are designed to do, is to spool up and wait for that. So I think those are common in a lot of ways, but I think the key thing, which we both touched on, is that there are people at big titans and at big government agencies who recognize that and are working on it. So I think the key thing right now is it's very easy to cherry pick examples on both sides of this, where a contract takes forever to negotiate, or innovation is considered a commodity and they're trying to price it as low as possible, versus examples where there are people, like Kay's talking about at Lockheed Martin, we have customers at the US Air Force and other places, where they get it, they know they need the innovation of what small entrepreneurial companies can provide, whether that's to a government customer at the end of the day or for commercial business. And so I think one of the keys for anyone here who's trying to navigate these waters is you got to find those key people, because those are the people who will tell you about the clauses hidden in your SBIR contract that you didn't know existed, that you can use to do a sole source justification forever for any amount of money. That's a sweet deal, but unless you're a lawyer who is an expert in contracts, which probably means you're not an aerospace entrepreneur, you're not going to know that, right? So a lot of these things are knowing the people who are trying to innovate, and in this way I want to kind of combine whether they're big companies or big government agencies, because there are people out there. These are very smart folks who know they need the innovation that's coming from small businesses, and they're trying to figure out a way to get it. And so there are allies across the board. The key is trying to find them and understand what are the programs, what are the special non-traditional contractor things that you can do because you're a small business, because you're a startup. And I think those in a lot of ways can alleviate some of the challenges that otherwise might scare you away from even thinking about working with titans or with the government.
The only thing I have additive is to support what you said, Kay, around maybe starting and staying on the commercial part, the track, and then letting the bigger contractors pluck the innovation that you're creating. The gap that potentially can fill in the ecosystem is capital, because you're not in the space, and you're independent, and you're in the commercial market, and raising money in that side of things is a lot easier. And friends and family, because they understand that, and going full down the aerospace or government sector. So one other thing I just want to delineate for the audience is that startup is a widely used term, and neither one of these companies are startups. Clearly, Lockheed Martin isn't either. Startup is pre-revenue, pre-proven product, technology, or service. And so we throw that term around a lot, startup. That's really coming out of the ground and trying to develop your idea. Once it's developed and you have revenue and you're growing, that we call it a scale-up. So it's kind of a new term in the sector, if you will. That's usually like $1 million plus revenue companies or scale-ups versus startups. We're still trying to prove what we have an idea to do. So just a little reference point there.
Can I jump in real quick on that? Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction, and I also want to add, since we're at Startup Week and you're probably going to be at other sessions hearing about other sectors and startups, traditionally that startup world is fed by seed stage investors who put in money to prove a concept and start to see what come business there. One of the unique things, which I think is both a challenge and an opportunity for space, is that one of the biggest seed stage investors is actually the US government through Small Business Innovative Research Grants, where they're saying, give us an idea and we'll give you 6 months of funding to prove it's viable and feasible, and then we'll give you, if you've proven that, up to 2 years more of funding to develop it and advance the technology readiness level or the maturity of the technology. And that's something that I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but is very unique to what we have in the space sector. Because in a traditional tech startup mindset or ecosystem, that feasibility stage, that proof of concept phase, is what you're out raising seed capital to do, getting investors and early on proving for the viability of the business and the technology. And so I think this is sort of a double-edged sword, because a lot of companies in the space scale-up or startup world should be taking advantage of that free money effectively. It's non-dilutive capital. They don't own any of your idea or your company. They just give you money to develop the technology.
So clarification,
Yeah.
can a founder take salary out of that SBIR funding?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah, so you can get paid to develop your good idea. That's the key. And I think that the double-edged sword, though, is that's great because it allows you to develop technologies that in a very niche area that NASA or the Air Force or other folks deem very important. The other side of that, though, is that what we don't have in space for companies that take that type of funding is a rigorous sort of market evaluation and a business structure review, which a seed stage investor would give you. So I think we see a lot of companies in space that are further down the traditional tech startup or scale up maturity curve, but maybe are not as mature on some of the market and some of the customer product fit stuff that a startup that you might hear in other sessions that had to go out and pitch 20 angel investors to get started, they are going to have a bit of an edge there. And I think that's a challenge and an opportunity for the space startup or small business ecosystem, because we have to balance, hey, free money, who's going to say no? But at the end of that free money train, we got to have commercial products. And I think that's not always an easy leap to make.
And the flip side of that would be sweat equity. It's a little weirder. It's a lot harder. But companies that are, for instance, in our scale up phase, we meet a lot of people that are starting out with a new idea, and the folks I would use, it would be formerly Planet Labs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Chris, and I will not say his last name because I butcher it every time, but he literally walked around the SmallSat conference in Utah begging for parts to build the first Dove, and look at them now. And you don't have to do it all at once, right? You put up a few, you get revenue going, you get product going, and you reinvest that money. That's what we've done. That's what a lot of companies do, is you just plow it all back in, and then you look to team with those other scale-up companies as a startup, and those can be your best friend too, because they see the value of that. They just came from that, and they want to be a part of the next big thing, just like everybody else does. So the partnerships, again, are incredibly important, and the networking that places like Ben and CCTW and CTLF and CSC and CSBR, all those areas. I mean, we have a ton of them, and it sounds like a lot, but those are value add places to meet like-minded people to keep going.
So just to throw another option out there for the startup companies. So, in addition to the US government having funds available, in addition, obviously, to angel investors, Lockheed Martin has funds as well. So we have compartmentalized our funds into places where we want to invest for true startups. These would be companies that we are excited about what they've done, but they're not making any money yet. Okay, so put that kind of as like an angel investor. We have a large venture fund for that. It's managed out of our corporate venture group, and they are out beating the streets every day looking for cool ideas and companies, and it's a pretty sizable fund that we have there. Then we have funds available to invest in companies that are actually have a business. They have a business case. They maybe have some contracts or are making money or headed down that commercial path, and we want to see what we can leverage for our government customers. And then, of course, there's an M&A, an acquisition group that's looking at actual acquisitions. So if you think of those three buckets, I would say not just Lockheed, probably many of the large aerospace companies have those funds. And it was specifically the influence of space startups that actually got us to create that first fund, which is that kind of angel fund, and really to add to that and make it a sizable. And that's how we got the Terran Orbital first initial investment. It came through that fund. So I just want to offer that out as well, as that's another whole group of financing. And we would do the due diligence, the assessment of the business, the technology. We would bring a lot of resources actually to helping a company navigate that path. We might have people on the board, but more importantly, we would have people that have a lot of the experience that they can offer. So I think back to Brad's point, you would get that with several of those funds.
Great. So is Greg Avery here by any chance? Great. So I'm going to talk about an article you wrote. It's a year old now, but so correct me if I misquote it, but this was published in the Denver Business Journal a year ago, I think probably during Startup Week last year. And it talks about the relative lack of new space companies in Colorado, at least investor-backed, new space companies in Colorado compared to some other parts of the country that have a big aerospace presence. So I'd like to ask the panel if you have any comments about that. Why do you think do you agree with that, and do you have any thoughts about that discrepancy?
I can start on that. I kind of disagree a little bit. I think, first of all, we've talked about how many space startups are really here in the Colorado area. This is a really strong aerospace and space community already. And it's growing, so that's the other thing. It's really growing at an increasing rate. I think a healthy and sustainable kind of community for that has to include several factors, right? So you not only have to have the number of startup companies, you have to have some federal R&D funding available. Think like DIUX that they've placed in California. You've got to have some big companies like Lockheed, which we've talked about. Denver is rich with some of the big primes. You also have to have a lot of engineering skills and the university R&D, and we certainly feel that with Metro State, with CU Boulder, and a bunch of the, mines as well. I mean, we are rich in engineering talent. I think the one thing that we are really missing in that vibrant ecosystem is probably the venture capital piece that the Silicon Valley, kind of a Silicon Valley type enjoys. We are kind of missing that. So I think that's the area where if there's one thing that's missing from the Colorado environment to stimulate and really make us truly an entrepreneurial hotbed, it would be that venture capital piece. And I'm sure the rest of the panel wants to comment on that.
Yeah, and like Kay said, like everyone has said, there's no lack of innovation, there's no lack of entrepreneurial spirit. And people came out west crazily enough to begin with, but it's the type of money you take. And it really depends on where you want your company to go and who you want to own your company when it's all said and done. From our perspective, we have all completely been self-funded, contractually funded. We have not taken any investment. And that's because honestly, where we are in the company right now, we want to continue to own it. And we want to say what happens. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's how we want to be. Now, if somebody came along like SoftBank and offered us $1 billion, would we say no? But you just got to look at, again, where you want your company to go and how you want it to run. And there are other ways to do that where they don't necessarily buy into your company. You put something into a joint venture with someone else and you jointly own that joint venture, right? But so I don't think there's any lack of innovation. There's no lack of entrepreneurial spirit. This state is incredible for that. It's I almost wonder if it's not on purpose sometimes that maybe, part of it may be the venture capitalists don't even come here, fly over or whatever. But another part of it is I think, some people have a strong enough will that they want to do it themselves and they want to own their company and they want to be in charge of their destiny. And the way you're going to do that is to continue to do it yourself. But again, venture plays a part. So I guess it's a weird statistic to try to track. You got to pay attention to what the companies here want to understand, if that's a good or a bad thing or it is.
Yeah, I think Kay kind of nailed it with that this is one of the most vibrant ecosystems for the space industry across the board in the country. I mean, we are in sort of the Front Range in Colorado, I would say, and I'll argue with anybody who disagrees, this is the place to do space in the United States and probably in the world.
Make sure Greg got that.
Yeah, did you get the quote on that one, Greg?
That's
I think I
strong.
told him that for the
That's
article too.
strong.
This is the place. And this is, I think Greg's already heard the story, so it's not exciting to him. But I think there's a couple areas, and Kay was right on the money. I think the investment part of the ecosystem is definitely where we're the most soft. We don't have that here in Colorado. And I don't think that's a uniquely challenge for space. This is a problem that we see in the biotech sector in Colorado and other places. And so sort of diving into that to understand why that is, I think it's good to think like an angel investor or like a venture capitalist. And they are writing, and if you're an angel investor, you're writing dozens, if not, over 100 checks in your sort of, 1 year investment timeline. And the goal there is to put money in a lot of different places so that when you have a massive breakout success, like an Uber or a Dropbox or a big company, that angel investment of $25,000 makes you 100x your money, right? That's their model. And one of the challenges I think we have in Colorado is that we don't have necessarily 100 companies that could be billion-dollar companies that are coming around on a pace that they do have out in Silicon Valley. An angel investor I was recently talking to said there's only one place in the world you can really be an angel investor, and that's Silicon Valley, because you can have 5 meetings a day, 5 days a week, continuously of investable companies, and they come to you and they're 15, 20 minutes away, depending on traffic, right? So the challenge is that when you're up against that, you're trying to ask somebody who wants to deploy what is high risk capital, they're playing a numbers game. And Colorado, just by our size right now, doesn't have the numbers of companies that are investable in the mind of an investor like they do in other places like Silicon Valley. So I think that's a challenge. But what I will say on the other side of that is that I think the fundamentals of what we have in Colorado will start to bring that here. And so one of our biggest challenges is to make sure, as we as a community, as a state, are telling that story, that people understand how great it is to have a company here. Bridge relocated here. Another example, Spire, a company that has raised over $140 million in the sort of venture community, is opening an office in Boulder, expanding their office in Boulder to be over 100 people. Right? They know that the talent is here, that the people they need to hire are here. They went and raised their money, honestly, all around the world. They were in California, Europe, and whatnot. But the challenge we have is a numbers game and a story game. I think we need to tell the story better to attract that capital, because one of the things that if we don't do that, it puts all the companies in Colorado at a disadvantage, effectively makes it more expensive for Colorado companies to raise capital, because we're either getting on an airplane. I think this is what I was quoted by Greg as talking about, is you either got to go to the flashy VCs on the West Coast, or you got to go to the old school titans of industry on the East Coast and convince them of why they should make that investment. And that's, if nothing else, just a logistical challenge of having to go to the airport and fly one way or the other to do an investor meeting. And so I think trying to pull in that investment community to Colorado and really explain why it's so great here is a good thing. And I don't think it should be a best kept secret of how great it is. We need to get the word out.
So there was a meeting a year or so ago, we had this conversation with Art and Jay and Stan and Brad and others around this capital gap in aerospace. And I don't want to dispute Greg's accuracy of his article. I'm sure it was spot on, but I kind of live more I'm a visionary, I'm a dreamer. And what I see is if we get the conversation above kind of the back room, the smoky room, and we get out in the public like we've done since that conversation
Well, that was in your basement.
That was my basement.
But it was dark.
It was dark. And it was a little tension there.
It was
right?
good.
It was
Yeah,
good.
it was good.
Healthy tension.
Yeah.
But the idea is that the aerospace is a pillar for Colorado. And shame on the governor for not being a little bit more boisterous around this for us, but maybe we have that opportunity with whomever our new governor is. But aerospace is critical for Colorado. And capital is critical for these companies and for this industry. And so I'll share something that's happened in tech and telecom that I don't think's happened in aerospace here, which is the Viasats and the EchoStars, or what was the global, Digital Globe. And these big success stories, when a great nutritional fruit drops its seeds, what happens? It spawns more. And it keeps replenishing. And we need that to happen from the capital events in the aerospace industry. Like, we've got to get people that have had capital events, now are wealthy, to get back in the industry and serve them, not only with resource, experience, connections, but money. Like, checks change things. And with a check, they can give all kinds of input to help companies, entrepreneurs, CEOs be more successful. And so that would be my advocacy for the space industry, is that people with the wealth that have received the wealth from the industry is to invest back in that industry. That's what I personally have done in tech and telecom. I have a blast working with young entrepreneurs. And I was talking to Larissa Herta this morning, who was the CEO of Time Warner Telecom. It was $30 million when she took it over. We sold for $5.7 billion to level 3. She's investing back in the community into small tech telecom companies. That's what we need. Nancy Phillips, same thing, that did it with Violess. She's investing in 20, 30 companies in the marketplace. We've got to nurture our own capital as well as draw outside capital. But I think if we continue to raise the noise level around this conversation, we can get what we need here, and we're good about that because we are a collaborative community that serves one another. It's got to be about something bigger than ourselves, and I love the momentum that's been started here.
That's great.
Okay, great. I think it's time to open it up for questions. So, the whole room is mic'd, so I don't think we need to pass around microphones, is what I've been told. So I'll go ahead and start back here.
Thank you so much for your insights. I do have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. So I think that a part of the venture capital missing from the ecosystem, I think there is a disconnection with the community, and there is a high barrier to entry for community. People think that they need to be rocket scientists to go into space, which is not true. So I think that entrepreneurs in the aerospace field do need to work on their storytelling and say, like, look, there are more things than just launching that need to be done in space. So I think that is important. The other thing, and I think it also ties to that, is when Tanya asked the first question about where can people innovate. Please give us examples, concrete examples. Don't say everything, because I know what everything means, but I know most of the people that are not familiar with the industry don't know what everything is. And so that'll be really helpful to people start considering what they could get into and start dreaming about what they could get into. Last but not least, is for venture capitalists, I think that when you guys talk about your business models, there is also this conception about this is going to happen in 20 years. And it's not very clear how you make money in between. But I know that you guys have a plan. I know that you have figured that out. Tell us about it. Let people know that you don't have to be making money in 20 years. You can start making money in the shorter term. So those are the kind of questions that I have.
Maybe I'll start with the first one. I think this goes back a lot to what Fred was mentioning, and that is that in a traditional ecosystem like we would maybe think of in Silicon Valley, you might make a bunch of money in your example of telecom or maybe in some web application, and you then want to go invest in other things that you understand, like web applications or telecom. And I think, as was pointed out, the challenge is that there has not been, at least as quickly as in other areas, a lot of billionaires minted from the space industry from exits or IPOs or however you want to think about it. And so I absolutely agree with you that the challenge is telling the story and explaining to those investors who, as an angel investor, are writing checks from their own checking account, what are they actually investing in and why? And I think we have an advantage from a space perspective because, if we're honest, space is like way cooler than a dating app, right? Or whatever else they could be investing in. And if nothing else, it gives them a hell of a story at the next party that they're at to talk about the space company. But absolutely, I don't have the answer to necessarily this, but I think you're right on that we have to find a way to reach people who are, and maybe we start with adjacent technologies, right? Because a lot of the telecom folks are using components of space, so maybe there's a adjacent angle there for angel investment. But I think that is absolutely a challenge, whether it's a company telling their story to an investor, or like I was talking about before, I think we as a community need to also do a better job of telling the story of why Colorado's ecosystem is so great. And I couldn't add any more to that than what you put on about being a real tight-knit community that you don't see in many other places.
From the area of innovation, machine learning and AI, obviously those are the next big things, right? If you look at, I hate to say this, but if you look at DARPA and what their next DARPA hard problem is, go focus on that one. Because they'll draw this crazy line in the sand and they'll see who can plant their flag closest for the cheapest. But that's not the only place. I mean, you know, spacecraft and space missions are following the tech, the PC industry as far as, you think about all these mega constellations that are going to go up. You can't build them one at a time, completely hands-on touch labor. There is going to have to be, you know, assembly line, and a lot of folks are talking about that. And how do you support that? And you know, that's a lot of what we look at in our company. But autonomy, machine learning, AI, moving data, bandwidth, optical comm. All those things. I mean, these spacecraft are creating gobs, teraflops of data, and how do you get that to the ground? How do you process that? It's not just about information anymore, or it's not just about data anymore. It's about the information, the product that becomes. So that has spawned so many adjacent markets in space-related activities. And I forgot your last question. I'm sorry.
Just a question for you guys. Where does IoT fit? Like, I think about IoT
Everything's a
innovation.
node. Everything is a node on the network now.
Okay, and is that applicable to?
Absolutely,
space?
absolutely.
So to your point about where to innovate.
Right. Yeah, I'll just add a few areas I know that we're looking at. Miniaturization, propulsion, materials engineering for 3D printing, software-defined anything, components, parts, satellites. I think to Maureen's point, data processing and algorithm enhancements, and then apps. I think to Maureen's point, you know, really the down the line of that value chain, how do you take this raw data and turn it into usable applications? And I think that's a whole different world that can bridge both the government and the commercial sectors. So those are some of the areas I would add.
I'd throw one more back in. A lot of folks have looked at debris, and that is a big deal, and it is a very hard problem. You know, a long time ago, if anybody saw the movie Spaceballs, and little maids out there with a vacuum cleaner in space, that's not so funny anymore. You're talking about literally darkening the skies with spacecraft. And it gets space is big, but at times it can be small. Everybody wants to be in the same spot for, you know, specific reasons, physics. You need sun, you need to be able to see what you want to see. So the areas of debris mitigation and keeping the space commons usable, because it doesn't just affect LEO, it affects the outer orbits, because you got to get through LEO to get out there. And we're going to have people up there soon. We already have people up there. I mean, if you look at how often the crew of station has to go into their little safety boat because they're going to have some sort of conjunction, that's a very big deal, and it's something that we all, as responsible participants in space, need to look at.
Maybe you just double down a little bit on those comments. I think one of the other key observations is that if you're sitting in a place where you're interested in starting a company related to space, your immediate attention is going to go to the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezoses of the world, right? And they, thankfully, are attacking problems that require incredibly large amounts of capital to even begin to address, right? Like billions and billions of dollars. Fortunately, they have it, so good for them. Most startups in this area probably aren't going to have $1 billion sitting around looking for something to do with it. And so the key thing I wanted to add is that most of the areas that you guys both mentioned are areas where innovation and real progress can be made for tens of thousands of dollars, not even millions or tens of millions of dollars. And I think this is something, if we look at analogies in other tech sectors, this is something that sort of cloud computing gave other tech sectors about 10 years ago, was the ability to start a company for 100K instead of 1 million or 2 million, right? And so this is something in space that I think there's a huge opportunity, especially for folks here in this area, because a lot of that subject matter expertise, whether it's related to weather, for data processing or related to other key things, that exists here, right? Those subject matter experts, those brilliant people are here in Colorado. And so the key is to connect the dots between what is the problem people have and how can you solve it or prove some progress towards solving it with the smaller amounts of capital that I think we're getting to now with miniaturization, with commercial parts and CubeSats and whatnot. We're getting to a world where you don't have to go out and raise $10 million to start a space company. You can do that in a bootstrapped sweat equity kind of way, which I think is really exciting and interesting, and something that most people looking at space think they have to go build a rocket or $1 billion satellite. And so I want to make sure we dispel that as a thing. You don't have to have that as activation energy to get in. A lot of times I'll joke, we build orbits and mission planning and operation tools at Advanced Space, and that's because when we started in 2011, we wanted to build rockets, but I didn't have billions of dollars to build rockets, and so we built orbits instead because orbits are a lot cheaper to build than rockets. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. You just have to apply sort of an entrepreneurial thought to how to innovate in space, and you don't necessarily want to start out with a huge, $10 million request from investors, because I don't think you need that to innovate.
Okay, look, you had the third question, I just want to touch on it really quickly and then go to, I know we have other questions in the back. So there was a question about how do you fund yourself in the interim before you get to the 20-year mark?
Well, like we said, Planet is a key example, right? They went out and they begged, borrowed, I will not say steal, but they worked hard. Get your product. It does not have. This is a dangerous thing, so I want to caveat when I say it doesn't have to be perfect from the get-go. It needs to be, obviously you have to have quality in those things, but get your product going. It doesn't have to be, we have a tech roadmap that we've been exercising for 6 years now, and it still goes years into the future. You don't have to be at the end of your tech roadmap when you first introduce, because you're going to plow that money back in, and that's how you bootstrap it. You get revenue, get building, get working, and then just keep cranking on it, and you do your product improvements, and that keeps people excited. You look at how AGI did it. They did it the same way. They came out with STK, and it did a few things, and now look at it. It's no longer satellite toolkit, it's system toolkit. And it's just the stages that you keep doing. You're not at the end of your roadmap when you start.
Was the question funding?
Yeah.
So it's showing
Short
return
term.
that's not 20 years out.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Next question.
Okay,
I think in the back there was you've had your hand up for a while, so.
So I've tried to boil down my questions as much as possible.
Speaking of space.
Yeah, is there a hot mic in the booth?
So there seems to be two different stories. So, sorry Lockheed, you're my prime target for Big Titan Prime. And then, there's Brad and there's Oakman, who are the startup scale-up size. So one thing that Lockheed talked about was that you guys really want to invest in partnerships and things of that sort. And I look at you guys as too big to fail in a way. So I understand you want to make a partnership with somebody that you can see being beneficial in the future. One of the challenges that scale-ups and startups have is you're trying to do as much as you can with the engineers that you have. Now, space requires a lot of different kinds of engineers. When you define partnerships,
Someone in the booth has a hot mic. Can we turn that on, please?
are you to a point where you're willing to lend out your assets to these small startups and scale-ups? Because one thing that does the trouble, let's say there's a really rare kind of math that has to be done to see this product even get to a prototype level, to get to a conceptual level. Are you guys willing to start, you have a deep deck of 25,000 people or something? That's at least the number my head's pulling out of there. Are you guys ready to start lending out some of your expertise to innovative startups and scale-ups? Because traditionally, you guys have had a lot of rules and regulations around non-compete and IP holds and things like that on anyone who works for you. That's my first question. And my second question is, at this startup and scale-up level, how are you guys addressing, are you just doing what you can to get to a prototype or a concept level with the engineers that you have? Or are you going out and seeking people to bring in on a short-term basis to help you get to that point? Because overhead and FTEs are expensive. So how do we get to the point where these commercial scale-ups and startups can compete against somebody who has 25,000 people to pull from?
Okay, so let's dissect your question a little bit.
I'm
First of
sorry,
all,
it's like 5 questions.
No, it's
in one.
okay.
I was trying.
I love the fact that you are making the point that people are an investment, and they absolutely are. And certainly as Lockheed Martin, we're investing in our people. We're out for specific kinds of engineering talent. And back to the great state of Colorado, I think we are lucky because there are tremendous universities producing students and young career folks that have great skills and new skills, aerospace engineering degrees, manufacturing engineering degrees, things like that. So it's a great point. But to address your point specifically, the answer is yes. We do, I won't say lend out, I would say that as a partnership, we are interested in the success of our partners. We are invested in the success of our partners. In some cases, that investment is dollars from like a venture fund or an acquisition fund. In other cases, that investment is people. Back to my example of Terran Orbital, we have sent experts over to help them. We have built facilities within their larger production area. So yes, the answer is we want you to be successful, so we're gonna help you with whatever we have. But we are coming to you because there is a particular capability or talent or product or process or culture that you bring to us that we don't have. But once we've identified that, we're on the same side as you in trying to make that work, especially if we're driven by a contract or something where we have to go perform together. So I hope that answers your question. I think the answer is yes.
My follow-on is what's your number and who do we call? How are we supposed to find that out, and how are we supposed to get in front of somebody as big and powerful as Lockheed?
Yeah, and that I think that's probably a really important question, and it's through conferences like this. We're trying to be out more as Lockheed Space. We're trying to attend not just events here in Colorado, but we've gone to the Utah Small Satellite Conference. I went to one in Silicon Valley a couple of times. We're trying to get people out. We're sending a lot of our engineers, in fact, to get out and look at hardware and software and apps and capabilities at a lot of these trade shows and events where I would say maybe 3 or 4 years ago we weren't attending at all. So that's one way. I think the venture fund that's managed out of corporate, I think there is a contact online and a method for you to submit or get in contact there. And I'm here and happy to give out my card and get you to the right folks that within Lockheed Martin Space, and I'm happy to help you navigate the large company thing, because I realize that is probably the hardest thing, is making those connections. But once we do, I want you to be sure, we want you to be successful, that we're not in there to steal your technology, we're not in there to change your company. I think Maureen made a great point about you have to decide what you want to get out of this as a CEO of a startup. How do you want to be funded? How do you want to engage with a company like Lockheed? And we are going to respect that. It doesn't do us any good necessarily to make you part of Lockheed Martin. That really doesn't accomplish the kind of startup mentality that we're actually after. So I hope that answers part of your question.
Maybe I can jump in for the question that was directed to us. Was I think, how do we compete or how do we add value to like a Lockheed Martin or a bigger prime? And I think of that from Advanced Space's perspective is that we have to be the best solution for whatever problem that customer has. And so for us, that is focusing on our core competencies and being the best in the world at what we do, so that when we go to partner with a big company, this isn't charity that we're looking for. We want to be able to add value better than what they could do internally. And so for us, that looks like we have a team of over a dozen folks who are experts in mission planning and operations. We want to be able to bring those skill sets to a company like Lockheed Martin so they can solve their problem without carrying 12 more people on their overhead in between problems they might have. And that's the same with any other customers that we have. Our perspective on it is that we are the jet ski and they are a super yacht. And so we can be quicker and more agile and do things a little differently, but everyone ultimately wants a jet ski and a super yacht, so they go really well.
And we have a place to store your jet ski on the super yacht.
Yeah, I don't have alcohol.
And yes, we're hiring, we don't just do subcontracts. As we grow, we try to grow our company in our core competency, but like I said before, our company will not do everything. We have our core competency that we want to be the best of the best at, and then we team with others. So it really just depends. But yes, open aerospace is hiring.
Aren't you hiring, right?
Okay, the blue shirt in the back.
Thank you. My name is Miguel Ayala, and I'd like to make an announcement. Today we're launching our startup called Exodus Space Corporation, and we're promising to build the first 100% fully reusable horizontal takeoff two-stage to orbit vehicle. We will have two versions, one for man-rated for tourism and crew and cargo transport, and another one, a smaller unmanned version that we can fast track the development of. And we are in the team. We have an intergenerational team composed of veterans of the space industry and also some fresh grads from top-notch engineering schools. Our guys have worked on the space shuttle, on the Falcon 9 rocket, Falcon Heavy, Dragon, you name it. Our team is pretty stout. We have a pretty developed design. We've been working on it for the last 8 years, and now we're ready to put it into development. We're looking for suppliers, partners, customers, potential investors, angel investors, venture capitalists, whoever wants to work with us. We'll have a booth tonight at the company job fair, so please come say hi. We'll have a small portion of our team there. So please come by and talk to us.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Are you based in Denver?
Yes, that's a good question. I forgot that. We will be based here in Denver, and the reason why we picked Colorado is because a lot of our strategic partners, companies that are already in their seed stages, they are based here. We're going to be horizontally integrated. Even though I worked for Elon Musk, I don't have the big pockets like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but we're hoping that with the micro market that we're trying to build here for space, we can find partners for propulsion components, for structures, mechanisms, robotics. So we definitely will be here probably on the south side of town, and we've been talking to the spaceport to potentially have a final assembly facility there. So we will be the final integrators.
I think we have time for one more question, because in this room, we're getting kicked out in about 15 minutes, but we do have breakout rooms across the way, so if we want to continue any conversations and if our panelists still have time, we can do that as well, but just to let you know. Yes?
Sorry, Art Maples with NASA, and I apologize, it's not a question, but it may in part answer something you asked. There's going to be a 2-day event November 7th and 8th down the road in Aurora called the Innovation and Opportunity Conference. You can go online, innovation-opportunity-conference. It is all about trying to connect technology coming out of small businesses with both government needs as well as large aerospace primes. The NASA SBIR program is going to be there, as well as folks from DARPA, Air Force Research Lab, MD5, the National Security Technology Accelerator. We're partnering with the large aerospace primes, so they will have representatives there who can talk about their technology needs and gaps with small businesses. So there's some flyers outside, and again, innovation-opportunity-conference startupconference.com. If you're interested, go online. So apologize, it's not a
Just need a
question.
better website, or
That's not a NASA choice.
That's the same AIAA
AIAA
event.
is partnering with this along with the Colorado Business Development Foundation and the Small Business Development Center. So
Great.
Thank you very much. Since that wasn't a question, let's do one more for Helen here.
Yeah, that gentleman, he brought up the spaceport, and I was wondering if you guys can speak a little bit on that.
So,
What are the
any
prospects?
comments about spaceport?
It's cool. No, I mean, it's a good, so a lot of innovation centers, and ideally, I believe that is what Spaceport intends to do, much like, and the only one that's popping to mind right now is Harwell in the UK. There's an innovation center for startups to come in and actually work amongst one another and collaborate. And so I think from a startup and scale up and new industry perspective, it will be very helpful to Colorado, because it will centralize a lot of innovators that can work together, and it's a little bit like one-stop shopping is the plan for it. So yes, it's supposed to be very helpful. They just received licensing for their launches, so it's moving forward. I don't know the stage at which it's at now, but it is moving forward.
And I just said, I think it's a natural addition to the portfolio of capabilities that we have in Colorado. And it's something that's been in work for, I think, the better part of 10 years. So I give the folks who had the perseverance to push that through great congratulations on that. And I'll just sort of add to that I think there are, or I know of multiple companies that actually started in Colorado, especially in some of like the propulsion testing areas, that had to leave Colorado because they did not have a place to test those engines and to do that work. And so I think the spaceport hopefully presents an opportunity for us to retain some of that, those companies that want to be here, but they just need a place to do their work. And I think it'll complement a lot of the other companies that are doing work here. So I give it best of luck. I think it's exciting.
I'll shout out to Vicki Lee real quick back at the room. She can tell you all about it.
Raise your hand.
She knows everything.
Just a little piece outside of space as we conclude, if you don't mind.
Okay.
We have a unique culture in Colorado, if you haven't noticed, but there's a DNA associated with it. And I think we sometimes take it for granted. How many people have actually been in Colorado for more than 5 years? So about half. So the other half have gotten here within the last 5 years. It's special because of one thing, besides the environment, right, the geography, the people. And the people have been coming here for, like Maureen, you said, we're all pioneers in some way for a long, long time. But there's a thread, and that DNA thread's about community and collaboration. When I think about the people that I know in this room, like Art, and Stan, and Maureen, and Brad, and others, like, people really want the greater good for the greater of all as much as they want it for themselves. They're not out to be extractive, they're here to be regenerative. And if I give you one thing to take with you as non-aerospace today, is read the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. He's a Wharton professor. He's celebrated online. And the whole element of, I think, our underlying DNA is that we serve first. We serve back. And that's what Adam Grant uses research to demonstrate how important that is for this DNA. Because if we come and just take, we won't have what has been so special, why we came here. So give and take. Be a giver, not a taker.
Excellent message. Thank you, panelists, for a wonderful session. I love that there's still questions, but unfortunately we're running out of time. But thank you so much, all four of you, for being here. What a treat.
Thank you.
Thank you.